afternoon and welcome to the last session of the day. Having talked about the developments in technology that is used in the health sector, we are now ready to talk about AI, which will impact several aspects of health services provision. Among these, safety of patients. Safety, of course, is something that can be defined differently, since it has different dimensions and different aspects. And we are here, along with this excellent panel, comprising representatives of different sectors and different fields, to talk about it. We have Mr. Dimosthenis Anagnostopoulos, who is Secretary General for Information Systems and Digital Governance. We have online with us Mr. Michail Bletsas, who is Research Scientist, Director of Computing at MIT Media Lab, but also Head of the National Cybersecurity Authority. We have Ms. Niki Tsouma, who is CEO of IDIKA. We also have Ms. Sanziana Negreanu Arboreanu, who is a Director at the Regulatory Affairs, Digital Capabilities and Outreach, Johnson & Johnson, and Nikolaos Lambrogeorgos, who is Client Executive in Cisco Hellas. We will start this panel discussion with a keynote address given by the Secretary General. Mr. Secretary General, you have the floor. Thank you very much for the invitation, and thank you very much for giving me the floor first. Just like in the previous panel, we talked about AI. We will touch upon this issue without, however, repeating many things. We will talk about useful things. You know that at the national level and in the context of the committee that has been set up by the Prime Minister, but also at the ministerial level with the latest one being AI Act, we approach issues pertaining to AI, and especially with regard to health. Allow me to say a few words in the beginning about what we are talking about, AI. The European Commission, as you know, has drafted, after long consultation in the European Union among the different member states, a regulation that refers to the utilization of AI and to AI products. And in order for this to be as effective as possible and to protect the rights and the personal data of citizens, but also to enhance innovation, it has to be put into practice. The AI Act, as is called, categorizes the systems of minimal risk, systems with limited risk, high risk, and unacceptable risk. And we all know that this categorization has to do with systems like deepfake, in which we show video showing someone who allegedly has said or done something. Then we have systems that make recommendations of films, for example, and systems of social scoring, like systems that have to do with the scoring of a person, meaning in social terms, what score they get, and in the end, we get a scoring of a person that is taken into account before providing health services or other types of services. This is the case at the level of the state, but also at the level of businesses, and it is unacceptable. But the health sector is extremely important for one particular reason, because when it comes to applications, we know that large part of research is turned to this field. Why? Because it can give products and solutions to a sector that is filled with problems, but also solutions that are very fitting to what AI can give. And for that reason, I would like to tell you that in the AI board, that is the board of the European Union for AI, and has as a purpose the implementation of AI Act, and to ensure its proper implementation in the European Union, by the way, I participate in this board, places particular emphasis at healthcare. This sector is deemed very important, not only in terms of research and rights of citizens, but also in terms of the benefits that the citizens can get. And that is why, in the context of the AI board, there's going to be a special support group for healthcare. In other words, in European Union, particular emphasis is given at this sector so that tangible conclusions can be taken. The European Union has made significant efforts and has drafted this very good text. The AI Act is a very effective and good regulation. But the truth is that both in Europe but also globally, the regulatory frameworks are lagging behind compared to research and products. And even more so because these are not taking place in the context of a state entity, but in the private sector that is doing an excellent work in this field. We are lagging behind. And no matter what we do at the regulatory framework, we will still be lagging behind. So the bet that Europe has to win is how to catch up with developments that are taking place globally and how to have something distinct, particular for the health sector in Europe. Because we always give particular attention to issues pertaining to personal data, but at the same time, we need to give attention to the way we're going to use this data, to the way that we're going to do everything right. We do not operate in a framework that allows everyone to do what they want, but in a framework that requires us to do things that we must. And in order to do that, we need to promote innovation. And in order to do that, we need to have the spaces where people can work, process data, and come up with conclusions that have to do with health and AI, and where they can actually test certain things, like a sandbox, for example, like an experiment. An experiment, for example, is when they place a bomb in the sand and they explode it and they see what are the results. We need similar types of experiments, similar sandboxes. You know that every country cannot possibly test algorithms in these sandboxes. We cannot have differences between Greece, Austria, or other countries. No, we need to have some common ways, and the one country needs to trust the other. These are very useful for health. And actually, today's panel is very interesting because it discusses how AI can enhance the safety and not what are the problems of AI that are associated with safety. You know, we are wondering what can be the negative dimension of AI in the safety of patients. Here, however, in the context of this panel, we are focusing on safety. And it's actually easy to identify the contribution of AI to safety, since AI is highly precise and it can prevent human error. Why? Because someone can take a look at the patient, the history, the treatment that is ideal, and in case something is wrong, they can actually take it out of the equation. Moreover, they can make an early diagnosis of a problem that hasn't been identified early on. Of course, someone who is living alone and is quite old. If we have data and if we have AI, we can actually anticipate what may happen and provide the necessary assistance or make the necessary intervention. Moreover, AI can help us process data that have to do with the transmission of diseases. The point is that there are many ways to use AI, but all these ways require good quality data. And in order to have this type of data, you need to collect data from different sources, then create a large pool, and then you need to use algorithms that are developed for data analysis in order to reach some findings. Data mining. And maybe you can also have a good machine learning. The point is to have good data. So what do we do about data? And I don't want to talk about the project of the Ministry. I believe that Ms. Tsouma talked extensively about IDIKA. I would like to talk about data in general. for which we are responsible as ministry. We need to be able to clean the registries from mistakes that may exist because, for example, I may access a registry with certain data that are different from the ones that exist in another registry. So if we decide to join this data, then we will have a big problem. Why? Because a patient will not be recognized or identified in another registry. In order to deal with that, we have developed a large set of actions that pertain to the healthening of the data of the public health registries. And we have this unified picture of the citizens so that Anagnostopoulos, myself, will be recognized as Anagnostopoulos in the different registries of the public sector. IDIKA, the tax authority registry, all sorts of registries. Police registry, and so on and so forth. You may think that this is irrelevant to health sector, but it is not. If you log in with TaxisNet code, then all other steps of the identification in other registries is done with these same tax codes. So you can see that there is a relation between the different registries. In short, we have worked extensively during the last few years in order to get results. We have actually gotten some results, and now we have initiated some other actions that will give us a major benefit, and that is the cleansing, as I put it, the single picture of the citizen and of the basic information that will allow us to have clean and correct and precise data about the citizens. This is the basis for servicing the citizens, but also for having good quality data. And if one collects this type of data, they will be able to process them and then reach some conclusions for our country and for Europe in general. Thank you very much for the invitation once again.
Thank you very much for this, sir. Now, apart from cybersecurity that Mr. Bletsas will talk about, it's AI in cybersecurity. Yes, of course. Now, according to the program, like, for instance, the cleansing or the purging of the registers, which is a big field to tackle, I think what is very important is the development of the regulatory framework in Europe in the Draghi report, this very heavy text that was circulated recently. Draghi himself says that the data are very important, for instance, to train new applications in artificial intelligence. So good data means good applications, which is understood by any lay person like myself regarding these issues. We will have the opportunity to see the initiatives you develop regarding AI in Greece, but I would like, if we can, have Mr. Bletsas, who is online and was joining us from afar. There you go. Welcome, Michail. Good afternoon. Now, we can hear you very well. Your comments, please. Right, well. Now, what I do is to check security of data. The gentleman has no sound at the moment. Mr. Bletsas, we can't hear you. Is your microphone muted, or is it the problem on our end? So data security, many a time, goes hand in hand with their usefulness. In this case, when we're talking about artificial intelligence applications in the field of health, we're talking in essence data processing that comes from medical records, health records. Now, well, I don't think that we actually have such medical records in Greece in an advanced form. We do have e-prescription, we do have some codes entered there, some hospitals have electronic medical records. The data are not interconnected. So, at the moment, we have to deal with a big challenge in being able to process these data and to extract useful results. Okay, like the SG said, particularly in terms of risk assessment, we can have exceptionally good data and results and will improve the results of the healthcare system. This, of course, is a general proposition or position or opinion, which has to do with the fact that we must have these electronic patient records move forward in Greece. I mean, there is no other investment in health that has such a multiplying effect. Now, in terms of cybersecurity, well, at the moment, unfortunately, hospitals, from the assessments and evaluations we have, are at the lowest possible level, primarily because they have obsolete equipment, which is not properly maintained in terms of cybersecurity. They do not receive all the security updates as regularly as they should. And then we don't have that many data. Each hospital has their own data. And of course, the leak of such data would be particularly problematic, primarily because these data are usually used to scam us later, defraud us later in Greece. Someone who knows you very well can tell you a story that you can believe and make you act on the basis of that story, which is something we've seen happen as of late, particularly in the field of banking transactions. We see a huge fraud there, scams that take place over the phone. Someone calls you and he gives you a credible story which convinces you to give them username and password, your credentials to your bank accounts. In health-related issues, obviously the subject matter is even more serious and important in terms of having the issue with insurance companies, private insurance, which many a time acquire access to data that they shouldn't have access to. And they make decisions that burden the insured parties. Recently we had a rather good initiative undertaken, if I'm not mistaken, that the insurance companies themselves said that they would not examine previous conditions, particularly in some cancers, so that people who were unfortunate in their lives overcame a huge obstacle to be able to be insured, clearly. But we have a connection. We have the Private Data Protection Authority, and we have a trend not to make data available. So AI without data is unthinkable. You can't have it. So we'll need to change our mindset, change our mentality of sorts, to have better technical capabilities in terms of controlling access to data, but also in keeping track of who used that data and for what reason, the so-called auditing. Data access auditing, not simply to lock the data and to have a key that locks and unlocks the data, but to have a constant monitoring and auditing of who uses it, to anonymize the data. In many instances, we don't need too much personal information, or do we? For instance, something that we do to train a model at the MIT, in order to train a model to assess the risk to have cancer over time, one needs nothing more than the diagnostic image and the outcome. You don't need names or any other identifying information regarding the patient. So cybersecurity is a thing that needs to be integrated into all these processes. But we need to be very careful. First of all, so as not to make it into a hindrance, because for reasons of security we say that we give no access to data because we have no way to provide secure access. And this is something we need to work on, especially as far as we're concerned. But at the same time, we need to take a look at the overall benefit for the social ensemble, as compared to some small lack or reduction of the level of privacy. Right, well, thank you so very much for this comment. And if it's not too difficult, please say online so that we can hear the rest of the speakers and then we can have a second comment. Now, moving on to the CEO of IDIKA. IDIKA is gathering a treasure, okay, a hoard of treasure. How can you, can this treasure help analyze and make us more safe, secure? Good afternoon. Thank you so very much for the invitation. I would like to make a comment about the dire position that I'm in whenever we're talking about health data on a panel. I hear people from different viewpoints and from different walks of life and from different interests saying on the one hand that, oh, we don't have enough data, we don't have access to data due to GDPR, and on the other hand, I hear people say that the access to health data is a very easy thing and we need to check into security issues, and I feel rather strange because both things in terms of health data is handled by us as the IDIKA. So we handle public data as a public organization, and we handle it with the greatest seriousness possible, and using all security standards at the disposal of the public sector in the country. And obviously we handle it on behalf of the Ministry of Health and the patients. That being said, the viewpoint of all these things, I mean, there are more than one viewpoint, okay? We talked about research. I heard exceptional things regarding research programs undertaken and currently running in the health sector. We as IDIKA are competent to implement and apply any research when such research has been completed. After they have seen what the risks are, after they have seen the results, they're ready that it works and must come in full implementation for the entire population of the country. What am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that obviously there is great research carried out by universities or doctors on very specialized things in a very small number of people, a very limited population that has to do with the patients of a hospital that suffer from a specific illness over a specific period of time. And it's data from, say, 5,000 patients. As a public agency or as a public agent or entity managing such data to provide health services to the citizens, we, for better or for worse, have the competence that says that this thing that was tested on 5,000 patients, to make it into a health service for 9 million citizens. So we need to come up with a way, and we need to come up with the systems that will allow this thing to become a health service for all citizens. This means that we need to focus on more than 2 levels of service provision. It is the tailor-made one, the personalized or individualized with the doctor or with the hospital or in a private research center they go to, and it is the generalized that is given as a health service provision by the state to the citizens. Another parameter that I would like to introduce and compare with, and combined rather with what is being discussed now, is to see the good or poor use of data by those who de facto have access to the data in question. Now, whether I have access to the data because I must have it, because I'm the attending physician and I make improper use of my access, and I exploit this information for other purposes other than the provision of health services to the patients, then this is a criminal offense. And this criminal offense is punishable when audited and when discovered. That being said, and since we're talking about health data, and in order to move on to logics that will allow us to utilize, to allow smart systems utilize this data, be that AI or BI or whatever methodologies which may be used on the data, either for prevention or for cure. What we need is homogeneous data, valid data, and timely data, when needed by the patient or by the citizen or by the doctor who is in front of their physician or who's on before a surgeon or whomever is called upon to offer them health services. This is why in IDIKA at the moment we are implementing projects of pivotal importance for the Ministry of Health in order to homogenize as much as we can these data that are created all over the country, all over the territory. Primary data, raw data created with the doctor, with the hospital, with the pharmacy, with the health center, wherever we are vaccinated. They're created when we have an accident. They're created where we go have some tests. These data are too many on a daily basis. And with three very important RRF projects, the effort is to homogenize them, to classify them, and to make them available to the doctor and to the patient, the citizen who is before the doctor at any given time. This is the project of homogenization and digitization of all data from all hospitals in the country. It is the solution to the problem that we're discussing, that hospital systems are vertical. Each hospital has their own system. They have the data, they contain the data of all citizens that pass through there. But the citizens who go to a hospital, they've already been to a doctor, and before that to another hospital. So through the homogenization of the data and the hospital systems at the central level, there will be an effort to homogenize the data in the patient's digital record, so that centrally the data that is kept with the hospital will compose, alongside other data, each citizen's personal medical record. And all hospitals will find themselves operationally and technically at the same level. When we say technically, it's to resolve the equipment-related problems or interconnection system problems, or with the use of safe networks to transfer data, transferring data through the public network of Cisco rather than any other private network that they may use at the local level. So there we need to find the problems of transferring and moving this data through the public network of data exchange, to categorize and classify and to have unified data on a public data center, which is the health cloud, which is created by the General Secretariat of Information System and is used by IDIKA to handle health data. And the homogenization at the operational and technical level. By that I mean all areas in which we have the creation of health-related data to be created in the same way, technically speaking, so as for it to be able to be managed centrally. Now, there are special processes and processings, but at a central level where we need to compose and synthesize all this information for the citizens, their doctors, we all need to speak the same language. So when, and at the same time as this, we're implementing the medical record project, which will be fed at this level from all points of creation of raw data information, health information, to build this patient's record. So all the information and data that any doctor needs to have wherever I may find myself as a citizen and need their service. So this is the second purpose, is to have it there. And the third project that's much more concrete and that has to do with oncology patients and oncology hospitals in the country that have much more specialized processing of data, but also of treatments. So this way, when all these techniques and data are interconnected, we will be able to see that we have that quality of data that will allow us to apply any system on those data, that will be able to help doctors safely make a prognosis or a diagnosis. In order to make a medical diagnosis or a prognosis, we need to have valid and timely data. It's not research. Okay, we're not right now at a point where we can give 5 bits of data to a doctor, allow them to do the research and see whether the results of the use of that data at the end of the day is safe or not. What we will give the doctor as a tool through an AI system or through methodology, we need to be the ones who will ensure that it will be safe as to the data. For this to become a tool for prediction, prognosis or cure, to avoid repeating mistakes of the past, such as this is research, but AI said something else, and worldwide because it says that all people are black, and it makes other assumptions and this and that. So such experiments may not happen when we have applied IT. So we're trying to ensure that we have valid data to be able to apply on them prediction methodologies, prognosis methodologies, AI, API, or any other intelligence we might come up with and use for public health. Thank you very much. And you raised very important issues, and I'm very glad to hear that apparently the integration of the interconnection of hospitals is something that will actually happen. I remember that this is a deficit of the health system, even from the age of the first BI, when Excel forms were used for data entry manually. So the system governance is very important, and it will allow us to do all these things. And you raised another issue that I would like us all to discuss later on that has to do with the quality of the data entered. I mean, I'm not entirely certain that we have understood that if I go to my doctor and my doctor makes some mistake, or he wants to serve me in terms of diagnosis, this diagnosis will stay in my file forever, and I will forever be a diabetic. And I don't know whether we have raised the awareness of the HCPs not to perform these things, because there are a lot of spillover effects which I'm not entirely certain we have comprehended entirely.
We are now ready to give the floor to Sanziana, Negreanu, Arboreanu. Sanziana, βάσει της εμπειρίας σου στην Ευρωπαϊκή Ένωση και όσον αφορά τον νέο κανονισμό, θα ήθελα να σε ρωτήσω πώς θεωρείς θα επηρεάσει η τεχνητή νοημοσύνη στην ασφάλεια των ασθενών. Σας ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ και σας ευχαριστώ που μου δίνετε την ευκαιρία να συμμετάσχω στο Health World του 2024 και να μιλήσω για αυτήν την ισορροπία μεταξύ της ρύθμισης των κανονισμών, της τεχνητής νοημοσύνης και τη διευκόλυνση της καινοτομίας στη βιομηχανία. Η τεχνητή νοημοσύνη στον τομέα της υγείας δεν είναι κάτι που αφορά το μέλλον, λαμβάνει χώρα ήδη τώρα. Ήδη εφαρμόζουμε τεχνητή νοημοσύνη σε όλο τον κύκλο ζωής ενός προϊόντος, από την παρασκευή μέχρι την αλυσίδα προμηθειών. Το θέμα είναι πώς χρησιμοποιούμε τη τεχνητή νοημοσύνη, ούτως ώστε να ενισχύσουμε μια τρισδιάστατη ηλεκτρονική χαρτογράφηση, παραδείγματος χάρη της καρδιάς, και έτσι να βοηθήσουμε τους ασθενείς που πάσχουν από αρρυθμία ή με άλλες παθήσεις καρδιάς. Χρησιμοποιούμε αυτό το σύστημα τρισδιάστατης χαρτογράφησης που ονομάζεται 3D mapping και που μας δίνει τη δυνατότητα να έχουμε μια τρισδιάστατη ανατομία της καρδιάς. Η τεχνητή νοημοσύνη πλέον μας επιτρέπει να αναλύουμε μεγάλα σετ δεδομένων και να εντοπίζουμε νέες τάσεις και μοτίβα για βελτιωμένες εκβάσεις για τους ασθενείς. Και όπως έχει υποθεί, η τεχνητή νοημοσύνη δεν μπορεί να υπάρξει χωρίς δεδομένα, όπως ακριβώς το αυτοκίνητο δεν μπορεί να κινηθεί χωρίς καύσιμα. Άρα η ποιότητα των δεδομένων, η διαλειτουργικότητά τους επιτρέπει την αύξηση της πρόσβασης και διευκολύνει την έρευνα και την ανάπτυξη στον τομέα της τεχνητής νοημοσύνης. Πιστεύουμε ότι η τεχνητή νοημοσύνη στον τομέα υγείας θα έχει ακόμα μεγαλύτερο αντίκτυπο μέσω της διεθνούς συνεργασίας και της διακυβέρνησης των δεδομένων που θα βελτιώσει και την ποιότητα αυτών. Σε αυτό το πλαίσιο, λοιπόν, η εναρμοσμένη εφαρμογή στο επίπεδο κράτων μελών του σχετικού κανονισμού θα βοηθήσει την τεχνητή νοημοσύνη να βελτιώσει την ποιότητα του τομέα υγείας. Σε αυτήν την εποχή επιτάχυνσης των τεχνολογικών εξελίξεων και εξέβρεσης νέων τρόπων χρήσης τεχνητής νοημοσύνης, το πλαίσιο πολιτικής προσπαθεί να προσαρμοστεί και συζητούμε τις καλύτερες πολιτικές και τους καλύτερους τρόπους για να προσεγγίσουμε την τεχνητή νοημοσύνη. Και στην προσπάθεια αυτή βασιζόμαστε σε μια ισορροπημένη προσέγγιση που βασίζεται στην εναρμόνιση των εθνικών νομοθεσιών και την εφαρμογή του AI Intelligence Act. Υπάρχει βεβαίως μια βιασύνη να ρυθμιστεί η τεχνητή νοημοσύνη, αλλά πρώτα απ' όλα θα πρέπει να αξιολογήσουμε τα υφιστάμενα νομοθετικά πλαίσια που μπορεί να βρουν εφαρμογή στην τεχνητή νοημοσύνη και να εντοπίσουμε τυχόν κενά, λαμβάνοντας υπόψη την οριζόντια φύση του AI Act, του Ευρωπαϊκού Κανονισμού δηλαδή, και στη συνέχεια θα πρέπει να διασφαλίσουμε ότι είναι ευταχρισμένοι όλοι οι κάθετοι νομοθετικοί τομείς που επιτρέπουν την αρμονική εφαρμογή αυτού του κανονισμού. Αν επικεντρωθούμε πάρα πολύ στον κίνδυνο, μπορεί να περιορίσουμε την καινοτομία αλλά και την πρόσβαση των ασθενών στην φροντίδα. Και πλέον βρισκόμαστε σε μια κρίσιμη στιγμή όπου η εφαρμογή του κανονισμού για τεχνητή νοημοσύνη για τα προϊόντα υγείας θα μας επιτρέψει να αντλήσουμε τα ωφέλη που αυτή μπορεί να μας προσφέρει. Σήμερα οι αποφάσεις που θα πάρουμε θα ορίσουν το μέλλον του τομέα υγείας όλων των χωρών αλλά και το ανταγωνιστικό επίπεδο της Ευρωπαϊκής Ένωσης. Και μόνο μέσω της συμμετοχής σε επικοδομητικό διάλογο με όλους τους υπεύθυνους χάραξης πολιτικής και τους εμπλεκόμενους φορείς που δραστηριοποιούνται σε αυτό το οικοσύστημα, θα μπορέσουμε να διασφαλίσουμε ότι η Ευρωπαϊκή Ένωση θα δημιουργήσει ένα περιβάλλον που διευκολύνει τη χρήση τέτοιων τεχνολογιών όπως η τεχνητή νοημοσύνη. Και εμείς στη JnJ είμαστε ένας εταίρος που πιστεύει βαθιά σε αυτό το διάλογο, προκειμένου να βρούμε τον καλύτερο τρόπο για να χρησιμοποιήσουμε τη τεχνητή νοημοσύνη προς όφελος των ασθενών και των συστημάτων υγείας. Σας ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ. Θα επανέλθω για να σας ρωτήσω λίγο για την κατάσταση παγκοσμίως και γενικότερα για τη θέση της Ευρώπης σε αυτό το παγκόσμιο περιβάλλον. Αλλά να δώσουμε τώρα το λόγο στον Νίκο Λαμπρογιώργο. Mr. Lambrogeorgos, you represent Cisco. Which is your view with regard to safety of data and of AI? I would like to thank in my turn the Hellenic American Chamber of Commerce for the invitation. This is a very interesting panel with very knowledgeable panelists, and I have a presentation to make. I don't know if it's working. Okay. I will try, in brief, to explain to you what is the approach of Cisco to AI and especially to security-related issues. I don't have to mention that AI is constantly evolving and constantly changing the way in which we live, purchase, drive, or what have you. More specifically, when it comes to health, it was mentioned previously, we have seen several different applications of AI that are made by the patients, by the nursing staff, the medical staff, and allow faster diagnosis. We have seen the AI being used in pharmacology with the acceleration of the development of drugs and in many other sectors. Of course, just like the title says, apart from the benefits that AI can offer, and this was also mentioned previously, there are many risks. These risks exist because hackers have now far more advanced tools in order to make more effective attacks. Many times they simulate the physical presence, and this is something that actually gives them what they need in order to spread and to multiply their attacks. So what do we need to do? We need to find ways to deal with these attacks. And what we have realized is that in order to do that, we need to have a lot of data. Cisco is ready to deal with this challenge because it has over 300,000 customers globally that have installed databases, and every day in the security center we have, Talus, we are processing and we are dealing with over 550 billion incidents, which allows us to get this wealth of data and thus be able to deal with this type of risks. So which are the areas that need to change or adapt so as to make better use of AI? The data networks, the security solutions, and the data centers. We, as Cisco, what we do is to prepare in order to connect all of the different components that are necessary for AI in a secure way. And for that purpose, what have we done? We have developed an architecture, Cisco HyperShield, as you can see on the screen. This is a security architecture that touches upon the different levels where an application of AI is taking place, offering at the same time extra security, and we use AI itself in our tools so that they can improve on their own and better adapt to the areas where they are needed. Another intervention that we have made is to change our equipment. We have now new hardware. This is the hardware that is used in data center. We have new processors, new cards, so that the AI algorithm can run in this equipment faster and far more effectively. And we also use AI on the platform of cooperation we have, the WebEx, by improving the algorithms and thus improving the sound and the physical language. Allow me at this point to repeat something that was mentioned by the Secretary General before. We believe that what is of utmost importance is the responsible use of AI. So Cisco believes in the use of AI in the tools, responsible use always, and that is why we have developed a framework where, along with our customers, we make the promise that the use of AI will be based on transparency, justice, responsibility, privacy, safety, and reliability. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Lambrogeorgos. We have some time left. We will borrow some time from the session for the conclusions. I will announce the conclusions, so I'm allowed to get some of the time from the next session. You talked about risks stemming from the bad use of AI. So what can we do in order to prevent that? Yes, to put it simply, it was mentioned that the wrong data in the hands of the wrong people is a very bad thing. It's a bad thing to disseminate delicate and sensitive data without all the necessary precautions. For example, we have a new application of AI with which a doctor or a nurse or someone wants to use. Why? Because by uploading data from treatments, diagnosis, or even personal data of the staff or of the patient, they will get faster answers. The point is, this application that was used by someone, is it validated and approved by IDIKA or the ministry? Are these data allowed to be uploaded? And if these data are uploaded without any control, are we certain that they will be used properly? No. The sure thing is that they would be used by the wrong people for the wrong purposes. So, to put it simply, we need to know what we use and what kind of data we upload. Another simple example that most of us use on a daily basis. We have a text and we want to translate it. What do? We use an AI tool, we upload the text, we say translate it, and we get the translation. Have we ever paid attention to whether this text is confidential? This uploading of the text on an AI tool is stored somewhere, and sometime in the future, some people may use it. In the past, we had similar examples. We had phishing, if you remember. Something similar will happen with AI today or in the future. I believe that this is how the students actually write the text today. No, I'm joking. Sanziana. Μιλάμε για ρυθμιστικά πλαίσια. Θα ήθελα να σας ρωτήσω λοιπόν πώς εξελίσσεται το πλαίσιο στην Ευρωπαϊκή Ένωση και πώς εξελίσσονται τα πλαίσια σε άλλα μέρη του κόσμου. Κοιτάξτε, παγκοσμίως δεν υπάρχει μία μεμονωμένη προσέγγιση για τη ρύθμιση της τεχνητής νοημοσύνης. Μεταξύ Ευρωπαϊκής Ένωσης και Ηνωμένων Πολιτειών υπάρχει μεγαλύτερη ευθυγράμμιση στο πλαίσιο του ΟΣΑ, δεδομένου ότι υπάρχουν κάποιες αρχές, όπως είναι ο ορισμός της τεχνητής νοημοσύνης, βασικές ανησυχίες που αφορούν την ανάπτυξη έγκυρης και έμπιστης τεχνητής νοημοσύνης, αλλά και δημιουργία προτύπων. Και αυτό είναι ένα ισχυρό θεμέλιο για διεθνή συνεργασία. Εν τούτοις υπάρχει μια διαφορετική προσέγγιση αν κοιτάξουμε τις διαφορετικές χώρες. Κάποιες χώρες στην Ευρωπαϊκή Ένωση αλλά και στη Βραζιλία ακολουθούν μια προσέγγιση που βασίζεται στον κίνδυνο, risk-based, και άλλες, όπως η Ινδία, επικεντρώνονται περισσότερο στην ενίσχυση της καινοτομίας. Στις Ηνωμένες Πολιτείες είναι μία μίξη, κάτι υβριδικό. Είναι οι ήπιοι νόμοι και βεβαίως με επικέντρωση στις περιοχές ανησυχίας. Αλλά αντί να συγκρίνουμε τα διάφορα συστήματα, θα έπρεπε να επιστρέψουμε σε αυτό που είπα πριν, ισορροπία μεταξύ κινδύνου και ωφέλους. Δηλαδή, πώς θα μπορέσουμε να επιτρέψουμε την καινοτομία διατηρώντας τα ηθικά όρια. Θα πρέπει να χρησιμοποιήσουμε τις υφιστάμενες κατευθυντήριες γραμμές που αφορούν την ηθική χρήση αυτών των τεχνολογιών και κυρίως σε τομείς όπως είναι ο τομέας της υγείας. Θα πρέπει να διατηρήσουμε μηχανισμούς που βασίζονται στον άνθρωπο προκειμένου να ενδυναμώσουμε τους επαγγελματίες, αλλά να επενδύσουμε και στον ψηφιακό γραμματισμό και να επενδύσουμε σε αυτόν. Στον τομέα υγείας, οι επιπλοκές του πώς θα ρυθμίσουμε τεχνητή νοημοσύνη θα είναι πολλές. Δεδομένου θα ορίσουν του κατά πόσο και σε ποιο βαθμό θα έχουν πρόσβαση οι ασθενείς. Όλοι οι ασθενείς σε όλο τον κόσμο θα πρέπει να έχουν ίδια πρόσβαση στην καινοτομία και είναι πάρα πολύ σημαντικό να προσαρμόσουμε τεχνητή νοημοσύνη στις ιδιαιτερότητες του κάθε τομέα, συμπεριλαμβανομένου του τομέα υγείας.
Madam Director, we talked a lot about securing and safeguarding data. Is IDIKA preparing a strategy or tools that will secure and ensure this proper use at the moment? What are your thoughts on the matter? Well, yes. Of course, there may be tools to audit and check whether and to what extent good use is performed, but the good use has to do with the Hippocratic Oath, sworn by each doctor. The moral part of the issue, of course, cannot be audited or checked. What we can do is, wherever we can, to install fail-safes and to perform daily checks about the results of improper use. Now, precisely, due to the fact that this whole endeavor of digital health is based on raw data that is supposedly correct, we can include fail-safes in the entry of raw data that can be as accurate and valid as possible. And, well, fail-safes in the way the health data are used within the healthcare system, such as overprescription, or where fail-safes already exist and the results can already be seen and felt. And all this ecosystem of individual IT systems that are used by the various users in the health sector to be able to be constantly audited and controlled and checked as to their proper use. I mean, obviously, we will always be chasing after something new that someone might imagine, and since technology advances at that level as well, we're always at a constant quest or search for ways to constantly monitor, check and audit the use primarily of data, and secondarily, misuse. Thank you so very much for that. Now, I would really like a comment by Mr. Bletsas, if Mr. Bletsas is still with us, both in your capacity as researcher, but also in your capacity as governor of the National Cybersecurity Authority. Now, as researchers, we're all asking for some access to the data. And it is partly justified by the reason that process of data creates information. Information is a public good, so it should be accessible to everyone. So access to data creates an important public good. Now, in your opinion, and I'm talking primarily about health, how can these data become available? What would be an integrated strategy that we could follow as a country? What would be the way that would allow us to achieve this in a rational and predictable time and space? Right, well, you see, I think we have quite several examples from various countries that are far more forward than we are. We can see what happens in France, that they had integrated patients' records, electronic records, for quite some time. And there's a lot of research assuming that these records are one of the key factors for the effectiveness of the French health system. Now, at the time, we don't have enough time to enumerate all the technical measures that we could be taking to make these data more available. For sure, committees are required, which we do have in place in hospitals, for instance. There are ethics committees regarding the use of their data. So this bit, is something that we have covered to a great extent, at least at the level of rules. Now, how well these work is an entirely different story. This is what we'll need to see and check, because, well, a key principle is that there is no point in passing legislation unless legislation is implemented and respected, and this happens in Greece all the time. I don't know how many doctors have been punished for misuse or improper access to data that they shouldn't have had, for instance. Are there any? I wonder. So we have much more rudimentary things to deal with at the moment. At the level of technology, yes, we need to build bigger databases. We need to have bigger auditing of the data access to know as to who uses it and for what purpose. We're talking about digital data. Now, if you give it to someone, you lose control, obviously. It's theirs to use. So this is something we'll need to see as well. On the basis of what we're trying to do, and having some people who will judge and decide whether this is appropriate use or not. Now, on the other hand, we're no longer talking about research alone, are we? We're talking about validation and application of methods already in use in other countries to a great extent. Let's leave research aside and see how we can move forward and adopt best practices. Also, when we're setting rules, the most important thing is for these rules to be implementable, to be applicable. And this is something we're looking into in the National Authority for Cybersecurity. We have the implementation law for the NIS2 European Directive, and it is of great concern to us to see the legislation and make it applicable and implementable, because we see many other pieces of legislation in Greece, especially in terms of technology, which may not be implemented. Either because we lack the appropriate staff, the human resources, or we lack the equipment. So this is something we need to look into and to set rules that will strike the proper balance. So when we're talking about AI, this is something that is constantly changing. It's in constant flux. So we can't come up with a regulation. I mean, for me, GDPR is already obsolete. It's antiquated. It hasn't changed all these years. So we're entering into this logic, into this mindset, and moving very slowly forward. And there's a lot of countries in the EU, you see, and this takes even longer. Right, thank you very much. Thanks to everyone, and thank you for being with us from afar. Thank you very much for your comments, Mr. Bletsas. Mr. SG, a more general question. What should we expect from the Ministry for Digital Governance, either in digital reform or the use of AI in health in the time to come? Right, yes, it's a beautiful question. It's very important and it's rather general. Now, two thoughts about what Mr. Bletsas was talking about, Mr. The governor of the Cybersecurity Authority. We need to have a framework that is implementable and will allow us to check who does what, who accesses what, even after the fact, in order to highlight such cases of misuse. A requirement to achieve this in all sectors, not only health, in all sectors in the country, is to have an appropriate auditing and recording of who has access to what data. This is very important. It is something that we're working on. And I think that it forms the basis to allow us to perform these audits and to showcase and highlight such problematic cases. Now, you know, in our country, the problem of audits and control is a big problem. Now, if we assign someone to do something and they did something problematically once per 1,000, it's very important for the other 999 to do their job properly. I'm not talking just about health, I'm talking about everything, and the responsibility and the accountability to ensure that something is done properly in all walks of life. Regarding AI, I will also say that it is also very important to focus on the data and exactly how they can be leveraged, utilized. The Ministry will run very fast a data governance project that will cover all government agencies, all public sector agencies, to make absolutely clear for each category of data in each project how these data may be used and what is valid. Just an aspect. How long we must maintain some categories of data, for instance, or where these data may be hosted. These are things that are of concern all over Europe, so it is of concern to us, and we're running a very big project that has to do with each action in the public sector, each IT system in the public sector, to use this IT governance to put these ducks in a row. So what we do in the future regarding AI, what we must do with a wealth of ideas that we're coming up with and utilizing best practices from other countries, is to combine it with the operational needs that will be communicated to us by the Ministry of Health. Truth be told, there are good examples in other countries, but we're talking about digital transformation, and the country is no longer important best practices. We're very proud because we can export best practices when we're talking about international interlocutors and say, how did you manage to do that? For instance, actions that have to do with interoperability or no longer having to submit documents when you're a citizen, it's something that we have been successful in as of late. E-wallets, things that have to do with IDIKA, the distinction they received, the award they received from the WICHA, the International IT Association, that these are things that allow us to export good practices abroad and say that this is important. What is of equal importance is that the country now, in the digital decade 2020-2030 report that replaced DESI, the Digital Economy Society Index, they recognize that we show the biggest progress in all European countries as regards digital electronic services to the citizens. So we're first, not as regards the end result, but as regards the improvement. So we're doing well. We can do even better, and we must do better. Putting stones on top of one of the other, and we're very proud of it. How to utilize data from various sectors for healthcare and for other things that are important as to where someone is living, the simplest of things. It's something we can do, and you can expect the ministry to bring forward some proposals as to how jointly utilize data from the public sector, fully ensuring the implementation of GDPR and citizens' personal data protection, but also to move faster forward, to know how we can be at a stage where we can say that we implement regulations and the laws, but to run faster forward. And also in this field and sector of AI, as a country, to choose a couple of sectors in which we can do this thing better in our lives. We can't do everything, but in some fields, in some areas, to focus there and to see how we can be a very good example that will definitely give added value and surplus value, added value, goodwill to what we can do in the future. A very good example was the data center. Greece is now a destination for someone to build data centers of geopolitical importance, of economic importance, importance for our lives and the image. Amazon, Google, digital reality. Now another one was added to these investments in a field that we were not pioneers, but we managed it with a consistent governmental strategy, which is why we are due congratulations for achieving this goal. It doesn't have to do with our ministry, it has to do with the Prime Minister for guiding us. And we're achieving it to a great extent. And I think that this is something to stay for the next years. These are critical infrastructures, important infrastructures. So I believe that in this field that we're talking about, we can have very good ideas. My recommendation would be not to open the entire gamut, not to open the entire range, to focus on some healthcare sectors, on artificial intelligence, and see how, as a country, we can be pioneers in collaboration with the private sector. Truth be told, this is what happens all over the country, all over the world, rather. To have private sector guided evolutions and developments in order to seize the day and move forward. Right, thank you very much. This is the closing of a very important and interesting roundtable and this day, which started with discussions around an important development, which is the striking of a framework agreement between the industry and the country's institution. We discussed about the future challenges faced by the healthcare systems, where Professor Moschelos gave a picture of the things that are to come. We talked about the new trends in technology products, and also how these are trends and developments that will be able to be financed in the healthcare system. It's a very important infrastructure here that has to do with reliability, and these two last developments talked about how we can use tools in everyday practice of health services provision and the safety of and security of citizens. I think that most of the discussions were very innovative, and very important things were said that we can use in the public dialogue as well as in tomorrow's session. Thank you very much all for being here in the first day of Health World, and we are waiting for you tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the morning. See you there.